Hello, everyone. I want to use the how to say it? I want to use a headless chicken as a metaphor for what I'm about to tell you in this video. In this video, I want to talk with you about the freeze response, well, the freeze reflex, which is basically that is the emotional reflex that happens when your mind registers danger. Okay, now look, what happens to a chicken when you cut its head off? Just take a random chicken and tuck, chuck its head off. What happens is there will be a lot of blood around. That's obvious, but the remarkable thing is the chicken will continue to walk around. Furthermore, the head has been chopped off, so the chicken is dead. But the shock of it, you can still is still manifested by the chicken walking around. I'm not going to show you any video of it because it's quite disturbing to some people. But you have those chickens whose head they've cut off, and the chicken is running around like crazy. I mean, the I would say the cadaver is running around like crazy. This is why the shock that went through the body of the chicken has activated the muscles, so the muscles remain active even when the chicken is basically dead. So because the muscles are active and the blood is still streaming, it, the cadaver of the chicken is still sensible to impulses. For example, if you have a headless chicken and you poke it with a piece of wood, the body will react to the piece of wood. The chicken itself is dead, but the cadaver is still reacting to it. And people that don't have discernment might think that the headless chicken is demon possessed. That's not the case. It's just the reflexes that are working. It's like a biological machine. It appears alive because, from your point of view, it appears as if the chicken is still living even without a head. But it's not living, it's just reacting. It's mechanically reacting. That's what the body is doing. That's it. Okay, now I'm going to use this as a metaphor. The chicken is dead. The chicken can feel nor anything, but the body is still acting out the shock. And with acting out, it's also the body is still responding to external influences. And it may perceive as if the body is alive, but it's not alive. Now, the same applies to the emotional state of being of human beings. Now, listen, I'm not saying that if you cut a human being's head off, that human being's body will remain reactive. That's not the case, okay? So don't even try it, don't experiment with it. What I'm saying here is that whenever, you see, because we have this part of our brain called the amygdala, and the amygdala is basically it registers danger. And whenever the amygdala, that part of the brain, registers danger, it sends a signal to basically our mind. Because we are immaterial, living immaterial bodies. So the brain is the material center of this biological system We call our body, our physical body. So when the amygdala in the brain registers danger, it sends off to our soul. That's basically like the operating system of our being. Now, in the soul, when the mind registers there is danger, it will, this is what will happen. The mind will go into a freeze response. Basically, the mind will stop all other activities and focus upon the danger. And what happens to the heart, the unconscious mind, which is the emotional center? The emotional center will act out with resistance against the perceived danger. So you're in a freeze response now, which means that the only thing that captures your mind is the danger ahead. All other things around you, all other information is ignored by your mind. and all of your emotions are hyperactive in order to avoid the danger. So what happens? Your body will respond to it by producing adrenaline and other um, hormones to empower your body to fight or to flee. This is called the flight fight response. Now, this system, how our body has been designed, it is meant to, because we live in a mortal world at the moment. These bodies are not immortal, so this system is there to basically to make us aware of physical danger and to avoid it. And listen, even if our bodies were immortal, it will still serve a purpose for us to avoid harm on our bodies. Okay, so okay, there's nothing wrong with the amygdala. Okay, it's just a part of our design. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the fight or flight response because again, it's meant to avoid harm on our physical bodies. Okay, but now there's one thing you need to understand: the amygdala only registers, and the amygdala only registers facts. Okay, that is perceived by the five senses, and it's the mind that's filtering out whether something is dangerous or not. So basically, let me just give it away to you. If your mind is not functioning well, but your mind has been deformed by your culture or by your upbringing, then it can be very possible that your amygdala registers danger, but that your mind ignores it because your mind is a filter, and according to the filter, it's not dangerous, so you won't respond to it. For example, there are people that grew up in dysfunctional families where violence was the norm, and such people, when they notice that when they are in a situation that escalates towards violence, they tend to feel comfortable. They shouldn't be comfortable. Why? Because the situation is dangerous, but their mind has been so deformed that their mind does not filter out the situation for what it really is. On the other hand, if you grew up in an isolated, homogeneous environment among a homogeneous population, and outsiders were always talked about as bad and dangerous people, then what happens to you when you go and live into the city and you see a lot of other type of people, people of color or people with different um, clothing styles, whatever. Your mind is deformed that it will begin to perceive those other people as dangerous. Because listen, the amygdala is just a part of the brain, but the mind also influences the amygdala. That means that because your brain also makes connections to impulses that you experience. Okay, for example, if you if you grew up somewhere where they ate a lot of corn and eating corn was praised emotionally by the people around you, then when you grow up, you will like the taste of corn. So what happens now? Your brain makes a connection between the taste of corn and euphoria. In the brain, you have this hormone called dopamine. It's basically a hormone that generates a feeling in the body of euphoria, of relaxation. It's the same hormone that also is also activated when you're having sex. So when your body makes, when your brain makes when your neurons make a connection between the taste of corn and dopamine, that means is that whenever you see um, corn, because this connection is made in your brain, you will a little bit of dopamine is released. On the other hand, if you grew up in a place where eating corn was seen as something disgusting, what happens now? The brain makes a connection between the amygdala being activated as a register of danger and the taste of corn. So every time you see corn, you don't like it. Yeah, it's very when you put it in your mouth and you taste the corn, you revolt against it. Why? Because your brain makes physical connections through your neurons. And the reason it does this is because your mind has registered corn. as traumatic, as dangerous. You understand what I'm saying here? So now that you understand this, realize that um, mind control is designed to deform you on the inside in order to comply with a certain political or economic agenda. That's the goal of mind control. Okay? Now, I wanted to talk about a headless chicken. In Dutch, they say a kip zonder kop. And a kip zonder kop, basically in Dutch, it means it's a form of speech, colloquial speech that implies that someone is acting without thinking. Now, listen, that's what happens when people are living in a tunnel vision. Okay, the tunnel vision is basically another word for the freeze response. You see, if let's say if you're walking down the street and a car appears out of nowhere, um, um, passing by you, you were almost hit by the car. You are in a freeze response to get away from danger, and your body is making all this extra energy and hormones in order for you to be safe. And listen, I'm not joking here. Some people even get supernatural abilities physically when they are in a freeze response. Why do you think that in certain martial arts they they concentrate and they scream as if are in grief, as if they are in great danger? You know why? Because when they are screaming like that, the brain registers it as danger. The amygdala is working, and there's a lot of energy being released, and all this energy may give their bodies um, a great boost. And this boost will make it possible, for example, for people to use their hands to break a rock. Anyone under normal circumstances, when you hit your hand on a rock, you will wound your hand. So don't do it. But those people that are involved in some occult disciplines, they will concentrate and meditate, and they will be able to break a rock with their hands. Something that's naturally is not possible, but because they have all this extra energy and power and this electronic tensions through their bodies, they are able to do it. You see, but nevertheless, this freeze response, if it lingers around, it will harm you. It will seriously harm you. Both emotionally, it will harm you, and physically. Because when you are in the freeze response, your vibrations are low. Why? Because the only focus your mind has is to avoid the danger. So all other things don't matter. And there's another thing. The moment naturally it works like this. If you're in freeze response and you run away, the moment you've ran away and you're out of danger anymore, you will experience a release of that extra of the energy that's caused by all those extra hormones. Both emotionally and physically, you will experience a release. And listen, this release will feel like heaven. You understand what I'm saying here? So this feeling of relief can be addictive. And listen, when someone has been subjected to traumatic abuse, to traumatic exposure on a regular basis, their bodies, their physically, their bodies will become used to the feeling of release. Okay, so what happens now is that without the individual being aware of it, they become addicted with acting out. And that acting out can be in a form of complaining, it can be in a form of um, becoming physically violent, attacking people, or it can be of just daydreaming and shutting down. I mean, really shutting down. There are people when they notice danger, they freeze. They really can't move anymore. That often happens. Their body just it doesn't really shut down immediately, but the body just it kind of shuts down. And respectful people, we are validating their trauma, and we're validating the abuse, and we're validating the addictions they have. And by doing that, we are also empowering the evil spirits that became attached to them. Very important to understand this. Now, I give an example of how a tunnel vision may impact an individual. There are diverse ways that a tunnel vision can impact an individual. It can also impact a whole society. As I mentioned before, let me give another illustration. Let's say that you live in France. Throughout 2015, there were several attacks by terrorists that claimed a Muslim background. Now, all around you, you hear people talk about jihadist Muslims. Now, over a period of time, this freeze response within the population that a lot of people have, they'll become addicted with seeking relief from those toxic energies. And what happens is every time you see a Muslim or a mosque, their amygdala is activated because their mind is identified Islam as dangerous. So every time they see Muslims, they are becoming hyper, and they need to release it. So what happens is that the society as whole will become more violent and more paranoid. And you see, the mainstream media often does this because when people have the need to charge their toxic energies, let's say that the government now comes with, no, not the government, let's say now you have companies that come with new products, and these products promote happiness. Now, listen carefully. Those people, their emotions are already attached to the release mechanism as a form of happiness. So any form of release that's immediately available, they will perceive it as happiness. So let's say that at the same time in France, you have a lot of, I don't know, you have a lot of new LCD screens, or you have a lot of new yoga programs or self-defense programs that are being released as services, and all these products are promoting a certain kind of relaxation. Now the society is charged, right? So now people don't want to become violent, so when they see a release, they will go after it. And once they get the release, they'll feel like they're in heaven. But it's an addiction, so now they need to keep being released over and over again. And that's when companies come with other products and people keep buying and buying and buying. Now, a headless chicken. I begin with that in this video. An headless chicken may appear as if it's alive, but it's really dead. It's only the body is still only reactive for a while. Think about this. Think about this. When you are witnessing that in your society, that in your environment, people tend to become more upset than understand that trouble is coming. You see? And that's why what you can do is, that's why you should always be in prayer. You see, a lot of times people think that prayer is only meant for, well, to make yourself feel good. That's not what prayer is. Prayer is not something mechanically. Prayer is an expression of your relationship, your trust upon the Lord. And fasting is related to it. Look, you remain in prayer because, listen, when you remain in prayer, that's the same as continuing in the word of the Lord. When you remain in prayer, what basically is happening is you are the power of the Holy Spirit is flowing through your body. Listen, in the Old Testament, they had the Ark of the Covenant, where the presence of the Lord was, and whenever they went into battle, they would carry the Ark of the Covenant. It was carried by selected priests, and because the Ark of the Covenant was there, there was power, there was high vibration energy being released from the ark upon the soldiers, and the soldiers won the battle. Now, this is not to promote war, but that's what happens. And there was a time that one individual touched, and even if a melody has a bewitchment in it, that's not a guarantee that the spell will work on you. There still needs to be an emotional agreement. For example, you can listen to a melody of a song, and okay, the melody is very, it's nice. You become activated by it, but that's it. But the moment that same melody is used with a lyric that talks about sadness, about cheating, what happens now is that the melody is activating you physically, but at the same time, those words in that melody are recorded by your brain. And when you listen to the music often, your brain will make connections with the melody and the message. So if the message is about cheating and about becoming angry, then listen, anytime your brain registers that melody, it will activate the amygdala, and you'll become angry, or you may have the tendency to cheat. Why? Because the melody is just a melody. But if the melody comes with words, with a message, and your brain will identify the message with the melody. And it's not only that. There is a type of music that there are some music that have vibrations in it that you don't hear with your physical ears, but it's recorded by your brain. And such music, even if there is no message attached to it by words, it will still activate um, certain parts of your brain that will impact your emotions. Why this is all fear driven? Most people tend to think that a little bit of fear is good because fear motivates you. No, no, no. Fear is not okay. It's not okay at all. And I made this recording to you. I call it Headless Chicken, just to illustrate to you how this operates. And listen carefully. All of us that went to school, I am going to assume that you went to school, unless you received homeschooling by your parents. But in school, this freeze response is used all the time by teachers. Exams by themselves are a form of programming. You know why? Because you go to class, you receive information by an authority figure, which you're not permitted to question. I'm not talking about college now, I'm talking about primary school, secondary school, or high school. You're not supposed to question it, him or her, because if you do, you will be sent out of class, your parents will be notified, and your parents are going to react against it. And there are going to be measurements against you at home. And for some people, that meant corporal punishment, physical punishment, or no more dessert, or no more playing with friends. So you knew that if you go against this authority figure, there's something bad going to happen. So your mind, your brain made a connection. Okay? So now when this authority figure is there, you have the urge to receive whatever the authority figure is saying. Then you have a test when you're expected to act out what you've received. And if you don't act out well on the test, there's going to be, you've experienced that, there are going to be frowns and rejection. So what happens now is that you are now developing a tunnel vision mentality. You're now developing a traumatic soul tie with the teacher in front of class. You're now also developing a traumatic soul tie. A soul tie is an emotional spiritual connection upon which energy is transferred. And what happens now is that your peers that also act well, you will identify with them. You will then become friends with those people. Why? Because they experience the same release of toxic energy as you do. And other students who tend to disrupt class, you will tend to act out against them in agreement with the teacher. You know why? Because you don't want to become the target of negative energy. So now you're the one transmitting negative energy to that individual in agreement with others. Now, when you graduate high school, there's this release that you experience. Woo! I'm graduated. I'm graduated. But now you have to go to college, and the same is repeated. Only now there's more freedom, more leeway in it. And now you have more so-called freedom. You can go to parties, you can go drinking, and all of that. Now all this release is available to you that was constricted towards you when you were still younger. So now you will have this euphoria in those years. But then you graduate college. Another big release. That's over with. I'm an adult now. I'm on my own. But after a few months, you will realize, okay, now it's working 9 to 5 in order to survive. So now the same traumatic bonds you are now developing, but now with other people, now with the people at the workplace. So when you look at it carefully, folks, this whole daily system that people are living in capitalism, that's been developed during the industrial age, that's in the 18th century. This whole system is toxic, but we don't see it as toxic because that's what we grew up in and that's what we identify with. Nevertheless, it's toxic. And that's why when you become born again, you will need to be delivered from all those traumatic bondings you have. Because listen, a traumatic bond that you have with another individual does not have to feel bad. Okay, if you're married and your spouse is hitting you, that's a traumatic bond right over there. But if that same spouse is also kind from time to time, you will have both a release and an intoxication of energy, of negative energy. So because of that, your mind is in confusion and you become attached to that individual. But if you only receive an intoxication of negative energy from that individual, you will leave. But in people you experience a release with, you tended to become stuck with them. So when your traumatic soul ties are broken, there are going to be so-called friendships that will not work for you anymore. Because then you will realize that those friendships are not real friendships. Because it's not friendship with the other individual, it's friendship with a traumatic soul tie. And because they had similar soul ties, you became connected to each other. And the evil spirits also was connecting between the two of you. But now that the traumatic soul tie has been broken, there is no transmitting of negative energy anymore between the two of you. So now you won't have feel anything in common with those people anymore. You understand what I'm saying here? So a lot of the so-called friendships and marriages we see out there, they are the affirmation of negative, of traumatic soul ties, in which abuse and traumas are ratified. And by that, evil spirits are given a home to live. So listen, just because you see someone being promoted socially, whether it's with sexual advantages like in marriage or in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or with a job, someone is being promoted. Just because someone is promoted, that doesn't mean it's okay. Okay? Understand all of this. Now, I'm going to give another illustration, then I'm going to close this recording. Let's say I'm going to use a female example now. Let's say you are a Christian woman. Okay, this is an illustration in which I'm used. This is an illustration especially for women that are believers, but men can identify themselves in it also. Anyway, I'm continuing. You are a Christian woman. You are a believer. You are in agreement with Christ. Okay, you're working somewhere. Okay, you're doing your job. You're not running your mouth. You are polite. You are behaving. And when someone asks for help, some of your colleagues, you do it. Then at the workplace, there is a promotion. One of the other women that arrived just shortly at the job. Shalom.